Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to our virtual cultural exchange between Morocco and Gibraltar. This event is organized jointly by the Gibraltar-Morocco Business Association, of which Mr. Clive Reid is president, and Strait of Gibraltar Association, of which Mr. Brahim Krikaz is president. I am Henry Sacramento, your host this evening. Just to remind our guests our viewers, that they will be able to put questions to our guests later on this evening, and encourage you to subscribe to our YouTube channel where you have the opportunity to watch previous guests. Well, let me introduce our guests. Good evening and welcome, Mr. John A. Gaggero, Chairman of the MH Bland Group.
Good evening, Henry.
Good evening, John. What a pleasure to have you with us. I know that the Gaggero family arrived in Gibraltar in 1771. How did it all begin, John?
Well, I'm going to be starting off this talk from a booklet that we produced to celebrate our 200th anniversary. The company was formed in 1810 by Marcus Henry Bland.
Wow.
And so we produced this booklet to celebrate our 200th anniversary. And it's going to give a broad history of MH Bland, but try and focus on the company's long history and links with Morocco. So there you see actually a Vin Mifsud painting in black and white, reproduced in black and white of our offices, which Marcus Henry Bland purchased when he first came out. Remember, 1810, that's 5 years after the Battle of Trafalgar.
Incredible.
Queen Victoria was born 9 years later in 1819. So Marcus Henry Bland, who came from Liverpool, saw that Gibraltar would be a strategic stop-off point on the way to Britain's growing empire, and he set up a business here, a ship agency. And in 1771, as you mentioned, the Gaggero family arrived in Gibraltar from the village of Sestri Levante near Genoa in Italy, but we weren't to come into the picture until quite some time later. And Marcus Henry, as I say, he was a Liverpool merchant. He set up the company in Gibraltar. He was succeeded by Marcus Horatio, his son, and then Marcus Hill, and then finally John Bland. And during that time, the company got into owning ships. If you turn the page, yep, and turn it again. And that is a picture of Joseph Gaggero, which I've just mentioned. You can turn the page again. So the Bland family developed into towage, salvage, fruit from the UK, so taking fruit to the UK and bringing coal down from the UK. If you turn the page, Mohammed, that's a picture of our ship, the Hercules, the Jebel Musa, towing a ship called the Nautilus through the Straits of Gibraltar. In the days of sailing ships, if the wind was blowing directly from the east or directly from the west, a ship would find it difficult and time-consuming to tack through the straits, and would often pay a tug, effectively, to tow it straight through the Straits of Gibraltar, and therefore save time, and that it was also safer, of course, in those days.
Oh, interesting.
And that's an image of what's something going on. And as I mentioned, we also got into the coal business. That is a picture of coaling in Gibraltar. John Bland, the last Bland, shall we say, got into business with Middleton and Mackintosh to create a company called Middleton, Mackintosh and Bland. This is, of course, John Mackintosh, who was a very well-known and celebrated philanthropist in Gibraltar, and on his death, Gibraltar benefited a lot from his great fortune that he built up, and he made his fortune in coal. If you carry on, Mohammed, the next page. Joseph Gaggero was a clerk for. If you go back, Joseph Gaggero was a clerk for John Bland, and John Bland was ill and didn't have any heirs, and so Joseph and his son, his brother Emmanuel, purchased the company, and the Gaggeros bought the company in 1891. And just underneath that photograph, you've got a little bit of graffiti that we discovered in 1986 from my grandfather's desk. And it says there, "Father had this desk since 1898, and I have worked at it since December 1913. My grandfather, George, later Sir George, joined the company in December 1913. So this is just before the outbreak of World War I. He was 17 years old, and his uncle Emmanuel was not well, and the family decided that George, at 17 years old, had to take over the company. So he did that, and my grandfather saw through the the First World War, the Spanish Civil War, World War II, and the start of the closed frontier years, and he was knighted by the king during the Second World War on the 1st of January 1941. If you carry on,
and that desk still exists in your office.
That desk is still there in our office, and there are more stories to tell about that desk, but I won't go into those now. Okay. That is an early picture of our offices. Maybe that picture might have been taken in the 1930s. The ground floor has changed a little bit, but the offices above are still look very much the same. And if you'd like to turn the page. We got into many activities. As I said, salvage, coal, fruit from Spain to the UK. During World War I, one of our vessels was served in the Dardanelles, and another vessel was torpedoed in the Bay of Biscay. And the company started developing services into Morocco and Algeria. If you want to turn over the page. There's an interesting photograph there at the bottom. The King of Siam's jewelry. This was a particular salvage that we did, and in amongst the salvaged items was a case labeled glassware, but addressed to the King of Siam.
Oh.
And it wasn't glassware at all. It was jeweled belts and daggers and medals and jewels and so on. And the original photograph details how much we made on the salvage, and it was a considerable amount. Those other pictures there show some of the coaling activities that went on. There, that next photograph which you just showed was the rescue in the Dardanelles. On the back of the rescue was a balloon under which was slung a basket, and as you can see, the ship is flying the white ensign because she was requisitioned by the British. And an observer would go underneath, underneath the balloon in the basket, and he would tell the guns of the battleships whether they were firing high or low or left or right. And there you are. If we then change to the next booklet that we have, there you have just a photograph of an airship north front. But I selected this booklet, which the company must have produced sometime between 1923 and 1930.
Because I believe Bland's opened its first office in Morocco in 1923. Is that correct?
1923, yes, that was the first Morocco office. And the SS Arab was the first passenger operating to Morocco in 1860. So it shows you how far back we go.
Yes.
There was each generation of Blands and Gaggeros had different traditions in naming vessels. So at the very early ships were called Arab, Adelia, Rescue, Hercules. But then more during my grandfather's time, the ships began to be called the Jibal Dersa, Jibal Sarsar, Jibal Yadid, Jibal Musa, Jibal Darif. If you carry on scrolling through some of these images, Mohammed, as your listeners will know, Jebel means mountain in Moroccan, and so our ships were called after Moroccan mountains. And this is a brochure that was produced to promote tourism effectively in Gibraltar, in Tangier, in Melilla, in Algeria, and promoting the lines that or the ports that we call that, and offering people the opportunity to discover North Africa. And this is an early travel brochure, should we say. So we will.
I find it fascinating.
Well, some of you will, some of your viewers will recognize some of these early photographs, and many of them will have been shown in Gibraltar old photos too in Facebook. But this is the original stuff, dating back to 1923, 1930. You've got early photographs of Tangier there. You'll recognize that.
Yes.
Square.
Yes.
And you've got other shots, the excursions that people were able to do. Some of it hasn't changed, the basics of it.
It's true, yes. This is fascinating. I mean, how much would a fare on one of those ships would have cost in those days, John? Would you know?
Well, I think the fares were published at the back of the, from London to Tangier and vice versa. Second class was £9, and first class was £14. From London to Casablanca, first class was £17, and second class was £12. At the end of this brochure, you've got a lot of information, a list of agents and stuff. We can't go through every page, but you can see there. And here on this page here, if you just scroll down, there you go. You see a little bit in the lines in red are where we used to operate to. So you've got Casablanca, you've obviously got Tangier, Gibraltar, Melilla. You go as far as Agadir, I think. No, Algeria.
Algeria, yes.
Algeria, and then up the Spanish coast. Um, and as I said earlier, we were also operating, perhaps not during this particular period, but earlier we were operating to the UK. And I've got pictures of some of our vessels under the Clifton Suspension Bridge, loading there. So we are opened offices in Tangier and Casablanca and so on. Yes, it's a good point to go to this section of the
Alec Guinness
Alec Guinness. This is a lovely film that was produced, I think, after the Second World War. You'll notice
Captain's Paradise, yes.
Captain's Paradise, yes, and you'll notice that Alec Guinness is actually wearing the MH Bland cat badge. The ship, the film, I think, was filmed on the Jibal Darif, and Alec Guinness played the part of a captain of one of our ships, which was operating a ferry service between Gibraltar and Tangier. In Gibraltar, he had an English wife, and in Tangier, he had his mistress.
Yes.
And the English wife wanted to party, and he wanted to just put his feet up in Gibraltar, whereas in Tangier, the mistress wanted to, play the housewife, and he wanted a party. So you can imagine the setting, halfway through the passage across the Straits, Alec Guinness, the captain, would have a photograph, and he'd change over between the mistress and the wife. And so you can imagine when the wife finally decides she's going to take a day trip to Tangier.
To Tangier.
It's a bit of
I remember seeing the film many years ago. It's quite funny, really. Interesting to watch.
It's got some lovely shots of Gibraltar. It's worth a watch, and anyone who loves Gibraltar and old photos would enjoy it. This particular image is two of our very first ships, the Arab and the Atelier, in the port of Tangier.
Yeah.
In the port of Tangier, before Tangier port was developed as it was later developed. And there we are. That's the start of the port of Tangier, shall we say.
And I believe, John, and correct me if I'm wrong, that Tangier actually built its port because of MH Bland's.
Well, certainly we were one of the reasons, I think, why Tangier port became what it is. We were one of the first users. And in fact, the other day, I pulled out an article of one of our ships calling at the port of Rabat. And it was a newspaper article saying that we were the first vessel to call at the port of Rabat. This was, I think, during the First World War, because part of the back page of the article referred to what was going on in the trenches of the First World War. So it was that time. And this particular image, because we've got these paintings that you see, just similar, like the one we've just seen, were all painted by an artist called Tufnell. And we've got about 18 of these paintings in the boardroom. If you just flip back a moment to the previous one, Mohammed, we've got about 18 of these paintings, and I didn't know the story of this particular painting until I read a book by Nicholas Rankin called "Defending the Rock." And what's going on there? That's actually taken from an incident just outside the port of Tangier, and it's actually a seaplane above the vessel.
Right.
A Spanish Francoist seaplane bombing our vessel. It ended up with a diplomatic protest by the British government, an apology issued by the Francoist government. And my grandfather, I think, was offered some sort of decoration, an honor of a Spanish honor, which he turned down at the time. But this image is taken from an incident which happened just outside the port of Tangier, and it's the Jibal Dursa, which we'll talk about later, but that's also got a checkered history in relation to Morocco,
Wow.
Casablanca, and so on and so forth. If you'd like to turn that next. So many of your viewers will recognize the Monscalpe.
The Monscalpe, yes.
Yeah, much loved by so many. She appears regularly on various social media platforms.
Yes.
Gibraltar old photos, and always causes a lot of interest.
When did it actually start operating, John?
The Monscalpe was built in
1954?
1954, I think it was. Yes, yep. 1954. She was built in Troon in Scotland. In fact, my father trained at the yard where she was built, and she was purpose-built for the Gibraltar Run. And she was the first purpose-built ferry to operate between Gibraltar and Tangier. Remember, in those days, Algeciras didn't operate any ferries, and we have the visitors book of the Monscalpe in our boardroom. You've got many famous people and royalty and so on, but my favorite entry in the visitors book of the Monscalpe is on the 6th of July 1962, where you've got Omar Sharif and Peter O'Toole crossing the Straits to Morocco to film Lawrence of Arabia.
Lawrence of Arabia, yes.
Wonderful. And of course, in the boardroom, we've got a model of the Monscalpe. We've got the original hammer that my grandmother used to launch the vessel, and the champagne cork from the champagne bottle that was broken on our hull as she went into the water for the first time.
We're very privileged to have seen all this. Your sister Mandy was very kind to show us around, Stephen and myself.
Yeah. There are many more pictures, but I've only selected those which sort of relate to Morocco.
These are your Tangier offices when they opened, I believe?
These are our Tangier offices. Today, the offices of the Port Authority in Tangier. But these were built by us in Tangier, and they still stand there at the entrance of the port of Tangier, and it's the home of the Tangier Port Authority. So yeah. And here more images of the office inside
yes.
Tangier, which I think you might recall better than I do. Actually,
yes.
I was too young. I don't know. I'm not going to tease you there, but yeah. And these offices,
Casablanca, yes.
Casablanca. You can see from the car that this is quite early, 20s, 30s.
Mm.
My father, I remember, told me that he used to get into his car and go down and visit all our offices and all our agents in Morocco, and it used to take him, I think it was 4 days, traveling right down south to the desert beyond Marrakesh, and he used to visit everyone and then drive back.
That must have been so important to your members of staff to get the big boss to come and see them.
Well, yes, there's always been a strong connection with the family and Morocco. I mean, my father told me lovely stories of visiting the mayor of Tangier, the Wali, and the hospitality, the famous hospitality of Moroccans, and lovely stories. And of course, Madame Port, which used to be just opposite our offices in Tangier, and our offices now are where Madame Port used to be. So we're still there.
Madame Port is now a McDonald's, John.
Yes, I know. Unfortunately.
Yes, but, unfortunately.
happy memories. Happy
Very
memories.
happy memories indeed, yes.
Happy memories. Here we start looking at GB Airways, which was set up in 1931, I think it was,
Gosh.
for the first time. That's a de Havilland Rapide. That's not the first aircraft that we operated. That I think is the second type of aircraft we operated. And if you go to the next photograph, Mohammed, that is the first aircraft, a seaplane. There
Wow.
wasn't an airport
An
in
airport.
Morocco, and you can see that we had to. I think that particular photograph is taken in Gibraltar, but if you go to the next photograph, in Tangier, no, yeah, well, in Tangier we used to have to discharge on a beach, and if you go 2 photographs along, you carry on, and the next one. Yeah, well, there she is again. That's landing again in Gibraltar. The Sarah Windover, General Godley. But there is a photograph in the ones that I've sent you um, that shows passengers being unloaded in Tangier from a little boat and being carried piggyback onto the beach.
Wow, that must have been quite an operation.
Yes, that was. That was iconic, really iconic.
Mm.
Um, then again, after the war, we purchased a Douglas Dakota, and she operated for years, going across the straits. Famously, she was called Yogi Bear.
I remember it. I remember it well.
Yeah, and the reason why she was called Yogi Bear, because one fine morning, we woke up and found that someone, and it must have been someone in the RAF, after a rowdy night out, had painted in front of the words Jiber, Y-O, Yogi Bear. And that is
Wow.
how Yogi Bear was called Yogi Bear. Once the name was painted on, it never unstuck. Uh,
Wow.
she remained Yogi Bear for the rest of her life.
I remember the late Mari Carmen Sanchez as the air hostess on the flight, and Daryl Ferro, who's now working for British Airways in the USA, because I used to take the flight regularly. I'd finish work on a Friday, be on the flight at 6, leaving Gibraltar, and then catching the connecting flight to Casablanca, and then coming back on a Sunday. I used to do that quite often in those days.
Well, I always remember in the days, um, well, the closed frontier, we didn't divert to Malaga, of course, as we do today.
No, you
Diverted
diverted to Tangier.
we diverted to Tangier, and
Yes.
then everyone would be flown from Tangier to Gibraltar by Yogi Bear in shuttles. Obviously, Yogi Bear was smaller than the plane flying from London, but
Yes.
with 2 or 3 trips, Yogi Bear was capable of carrying everyone from Tangier to Gibraltar in bad weather, in any weather. And
It always landed, and it
it
always
always
took off.
Yep, Captain Kelly, who was the pilot that I remember, would always manage to get into Gibraltar, whatever the weather. Um, and yeah, happy memories again.
Happy memories indeed, John. Yes.
And then, of course, after the Dakota, it went into the Viscount, which was slightly larger. And operated the service for quite some number of years, 4 engines. The trouble with operating aircraft from Gibraltar and keeping them in Gibraltar was always that there's a lot of salt in the air, and we have a lot of humidity, but that humidity carries with it a lot of salt. and that affects an airframe. So we would regularly have to take her back to the UK and replace parts which had been affected by the salt-laden atmosphere.
Wow, how interesting.
So corrosion was an issue. There you have GB Airways
In color.
in color. Yes, yes. And so now we go on to the Jibal Dursa. The Jibal Dursa operated before the Second World War and during the Second World War. Obviously named after a Moroccan mountain.
Mountain, yes.
Which I think Mohammed knows.
Yes, near Tetuan.
Near Tetuan, exactly.
Yes.
I didn't know that until he told me. And I'm not sure where this photograph was taken. It might have been taken in Tangier, early Tangier, but this certainly is Tangier. That photograph which you've just shown, Mohammed, that certainly is Tangier with the railway lines that
That's right.
some people will remember. And in those days, you didn't roll off a ferry. Your car would be loaded with those derricks, those shall we say cranes, which you can see at the back of the ship, and they would be lifted up and dropped into the hold, and that is how cars were loaded onto ships in those days.
In other words, there was no ramp like we have nowadays.
There was no ramp. You know,
yeah.
The Mont Galbet was one of the first to do it that way, and that was a great advantage of doing it that way. This is the model that we have in the office of the Jibal Dursa being restored by a chap called Eddie Tavares.
Eddie Tavares, yes.
As you can see, she's a big model. Eddie Tavares used to work in the dockyard. She's a big model, and he had the patience and the skill to be able to remove layers of dust that had accumulated over the years. And today she lies pristine and well cared for in our offices. As you can see, she's 2 meters long.
Oh, she's a beautiful model.
She's a lovely model. And
yes.
The Jibal Dursa, one of the things that she did was at the start of the Second World War, the population of Gibraltar was evacuated because Gibraltar became a fortress.
Yes.
Only essential personnel were allowed to stay
behind, yes,
on the fortress. So, as you know, as many of your listeners would know, people of Gibraltar went off to Madeira, Northern Ireland, Jamaica, London, and of course, some of them started off going to Casablanca.
That's right.
And the Jibal Dursa took people to Casablanca, but then there was the incident where the French fleet was sunk by the British at Mers el Kabir, I think it was, and that there were problems in Morocco for Gibraltarians there, and so the Jibal Dursa had to go back and pick them up and bring them back.
Very interesting book written by the late Lourdes Galliano, where she explains how it all happened.
There have been a number of articles recently in the press about this, in the Gibraltar Chronicle, and those who want to know more can look at that. But here you are, Gibraltar, Tangier, and I think she went further afield as well. She didn't go just to Tangier. And then if you go on, that is the Jibal Sarsar, which has a very interesting history, because my grandfather bought the Jibal Sarsar in 1920, just after the First World War. The Jibal Sarsar had been built for P&O, and she was named the ISIS. And she used to run the service between Port Said and Brindisi. Port Said on the northern coast of Africa, obviously,
Yes.
and Brindisi on the heel of Italy. Now, if you wanted to leave the United Kingdom and travel to the empire in the east, Singapore, Hong Kong, Australia, India, the fastest way to do that would be to take the Orient Express from Calais down to Brindisi, catch the fastest ship between Brindisi and Port Said, take the camel train from Port Said to Suez, and then take your ship to wherever you were going, from Suez to India, to Australia, to Hong Kong, to Singapore, wherever. And the fastest ship between Port Said and Brindisi would carry a golden cockerel on her foremast. And the Isis, later the Jibal Sarsar, carried this golden cockerel. So we've got a picture of the Jibal Sarsar with the golden cockerel, and some years ago, in the P&O magazine Wavelength, there was a picture. That's a model of the Jibal Sarsar, which is actually here in my office. Anyway, in the P&O magazine, the Wavelength, they were decommissioning the Canberra, the cruise liner, the Canberra. She went down to the Falkland Islands and took British servicemen during the Falklands War. And after the Falklands War, she briefly, was recommissioned as a cruise liner, but very quickly was sold. And before selling her, before scrapping her effectively, because she was sold for scrap, they were emptying the lower parts of the ship, and they discovered this golden cockerel. And there was a picture in the P&O magazine Wavelength of this golden cockerel, and they said, well, can anyone tell us what this is about? And some people wrote in saying that it was the golden cockerel was awarded to the fastest ship in the P&O fleet, and others said that it was given to the fastest ship in going to Australia. But we were able to quote the story that I've just recounted to you.
How interesting.
Between Port Said and Brindisi, where it seems the tradition started, and of course that seems to have started the tradition. So we have, if you go to the next image, Mohammed. No, there was a picture of the Jibal Sarsar in the artwork that we saw earlier, where the ship was discharging General Loudney at Tangier somewhere. No, maybe I didn't send it to you. Sorry. So if we carry on to, that's the Jibal Sarsar. Here we go through the Mons Calpe.
Mons Calpe. Actually, we have a very interesting footage, if you'd like us to play that now,
Yes.
about the Mons Calpe.
Go ahead, please.
Mohammed, if you can play the footage we have on the Mons Calpe, please.
Yeah. People will recognize that photograph of Mons Calpe at Tangier. And this, this is the first of the videos. That is at Tangier.
And this dates back to when, John? Do you know when this footage was actually taken?
This must have been in the late 50s. Shortly after she was built. Shortly after she was built. Yeah. Unfortunately, it's got no sound, but it's still interesting to watch.
Yeah, especially those that didn't know it at the time, how it has all changed. And
Yes.
You were explaining to me that you were able to obtain this through the wife of the captain?
Yes. I'm not sure if this is the longer video or the shorter video. I think this is the longer video. And that was given to us by the family of Captain Tom Bill, who must have been captain of the Mons Calpe before the captain that I knew, which is Captain Delph. Many Gibraltarians will remember Captain Delph, who was the captain, I think, for most of her life, most of her career. But Captain Tom Bill was obviously captain before Captain Delph, and his family came to the office with a sextant of the Mons Calpe, which belonged to Captain Bill. And here, in fact, this is also the Mons.
Port of Tangier?
No, this is Mons Avila doing work with ships in the bay.
Right.
That, I think, is the Mons Calpe again. Here, this is the Mons Calpe. And this is the bridge of the Mons Calpe. And that's the Moroccan flag flying from her mast. So she's obviously going into, or has been into, Tangier.
Tangier. And this is the captain himself?
This is the captain. Yeah, full ahead. Coming into Tangier from the looks of it. Yes, there you are.
Yes, that's Tangier. Gosh, that has certainly changed. And that's when the train used to go all the way to the port.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Which doesn't happen nowadays either.
Yeah.
And there we see an elephant.
Yes, and obviously it must have been around Christmas time, because the Mons Calpe would bring in elephants and camels for the cavalcade in Gibraltar.
That's right, the Three Kings Cavalcade, which is held on the 5th of January.
Yep, so it must have been around that time. And we had real animals for the cavalcade in those days. And of course, you know, Gibraltar relied so much on Moroccan workers because of the closed frontier. And when the frontier closed, we also, in the Mons Calpe was a lifeline, because, you know, our fruit and vegetables would come in on the Mons Calpe during the closed frontier years.
There we see some footage of Tangier itself, donkeys as transport. And this is a very interesting shot.
Yes, many of your viewers will recognize from where that shot is taken, by the cannons up there.
Boulevard Pasteur, yes.
Absolutely. And how that has changed now.
There's the camels.
Here you are, yep. Camels being loaded on board the ship. Ready for the cavalcade, the Three Kings Cavalcade. And here returning to Gibraltar. Wearing the same uniform that they wore for Captain's Paradise.
Yes. Back in Gibraltar.
That's Waterport.
Yep.
Yeah.
Famous Fuente del Capullo.
Absolutely. And where you can drive into casemates in those days. It was a party.
Yes. Amazing footage. And Main Street, where you used to be able to drive in and park.
Now, I have a picture. Looking at that image, I have a picture of the Mons Calpe passing in front of the Queen Elizabeth. And it was dated in 1954, in December. And I was recently given that image. So there it is.
There it is, yes.
There it is. And I've actually got a photograph of that I was given recently. And seeing this video now, I've just recognized the photo. I've just linked the photograph and the video. So I can actually date this video.
Well, we're calling it a video, but I'm sure it was a Super 8 film in those days,
Absolutely.
taken by an old traditional camera.
Is this the end of the film, Mohammed?
I believe it is. And maybe now we can move on to the photographs of the Montskalper itself, where we see the crew, Mohammed. So when did the Montskalper actually start doing the Gibraltar-Tangier route?
1954, and of course
1954.
she was eventually sold in
To a
1980,
Greek company, I believe, no, John?
1986. She was sold because the frontier had opened in 1985, and of course, in 1980, by 1985, Algeciras had established itself as a major ferry port
Yes,
for the many Moroccans who go back to Morocco, during the summer months and so on. So they had established a large operation, and to go through an additional frontier on your way back to Morocco and use the Montskalper by having to go through Gibraltar would have been difficult. That's
yes.
Montskalper in Medique. So because Gibraltarians no longer needed to go to Tangier in order to go to Spain, they now had the option to drive through the frontier with the opening of the frontier. The Montskalper became unviable. So
Yeah, well, the numbers must have decreased tremendously because,
yeah,
as you say, during all those years, it was our lifeline, not just for food, but our labor that came from Morocco. Uh, for many years, Gibraltarians chose Tangier to have holidays.
absolutely.
Yeah,
So when the frontier opened, the vessel was no longer viable, and we sold her to Greek interests. And that's Captain
Captain
Bell,
Delve, yes,
as many people will recognize.
yes.
To Greek interests, who it was their first vessel. They started their shipping line um, with the Montskalper. And I was contacted some years ago by a naval architect who wanted to make a model of the vessel because the owners of that line placed a lot of sentimental value on the Montskalper, which was renamed the city of Limassol, and they wanted to create a model of her. So I sent them the plans that we had of the vessel, and they were able to make a model of the Montskalper different to the one that we have because they made adjustments to it. They put aircraft seats into it, changed it.
Wow.
She was eventually sold to the government of Mozambique, and we understand she sank in a storm at the entrance to the port of Maputo. And if you look at Google Earth, it's difficult to spot her, but you can still see her skeleton there on the beach. It's rather sad. But
Wow.
there she is, I believe, in the entrance of the port of Maputo. That's an image of
The model that you have in your office.
the model that we have in our office. Again,
Yeah.
created by Eddie Tavares, who you saw earlier restoring the
Yes.
Gibraltar. She's a lovely model and very faithful to the original design.
To the original, yes.
She had lovely lines.
Such fond memories, John. Such fond memories.
You can almost hear the throb
Yes.
of those polar engines that drove her. And here we have some of her crew.
Some of the crew, yes.
Many of them Moroccans, obviously. Many of them became great friends of mine, and I remember them very, very fondly. On the right there, and the black and white photograph, there's a man in a coat and a hat, a trilby hat, if you want to call it that.
Yes.
That is Akiba Cohen Levy, who was a famous character. He used to head up our team at Tangier, and he would come into Gibraltar. He didn't have a passport, but he would come into Gibraltar without a passport. Everyone knew him, and he would even go into Spain without a passport. Everyone knew him,
Wow.
and he was highly respected, very trusted, a great character, and in fact, my brother's boat is called Akiva.
Oh, interesting.
So Akiva, and there you have some people recognize Monteverde on the left,
Yes.
in the restaurant of the Monscalpe, and that metal sculpture which you see on the wall there, I have actually in my office. I'm looking at it now. It's in my office. There were four of those metal sculptures. They were created by a chap called Roland Emmett, who's one of the few cartoonists who's displayed in the Smithsonian Museum in New York. Very famous cartoonist. I think these were the only cartoons he ever made in steel. So it's
In
raw
steel.
time.
Wow.
It's raw time, and each piece is specifically made.
How many members of staff, John, did it take to man the Monscalpe?
You better ask my father that, but I can imagine it was a couple of hundred.
Right.
This is another video, a shorter video.
Mm.
Monscalpe, I think, leaving Gibraltar, because the Monscalpe operated. I'm not sure whether it was 24 hours a day, but it was certainly, a long day, and I think they had more than one shift.
See, and I remember as well on a Friday night, you'd have a local Gibraltarian group playing, and people could go and just on the trip, they wouldn't get off the ship. They would just go, instead of going to the discotheque, they would go on the Monscalpe and they would drink and dance and go to Tangier and come back to Gibraltar.
Well, of course, it was duty free. The booze was duty free. So that's her leaving or going into, I think, leaving Tangier. There you are.
Fantastic footage.
Yeah. My father would be called by Captain Delph whenever the weather was a bit tricky,
Iffy. Yeah.
iffy, and between them they would decide whether the weather was too bad for the crossing. But invariably, she sailed, and I think they called Captain Delph the Wolf of the Straits.
Yes.
Something like that. Something like that. But he was when everyone else stayed in port, he was out there. And there you have her coming back to Gibraltar.
To Gibraltar. Funnily enough, John, my first ever trip to Tangier, I won at a charity gala dinner. It was a fancy dress, and my first wife and I won a trip to Tangier, and that was our very first trip in 1974.
Yeah. Well, I mentioned Madame Port earlier, and I have very fond memories of Captain Delph bringing back cakes from Madame Port.
Yes.
When I was a child. And there are other stories, but I won't go into them.
Absolutely.
John,
your company at the moment has the cable car here in the Rock.
So this brochure, which I'll talk you through briefly, gives you a taste of what the group is today. And if you turn the page, Mohammed, can you zoom out in some way?
Mohammed, if you can scroll down, there we go.
Can you show the whole page in some way or not? So yeah, the group is split into effectively two. That's better. That's good. Okay. Two divisions, shall we say? Marine and tourism. And the marine division is itself split into two. The port agency. We have today 9 offices in Spain, including the Canary Islands, 4 offices in Morocco. We're in Tangier, Tangerville, Tanger Med. We're in Casablanca, Mohammedia, Jofla Spa, and we're in Malta. And so we do what Marcus Henry Bland started off doing back in 1810. We are port agents, which to those people who don't know what a port agent does, we arrange everything that a ship needs when she comes into port. So one of these big super tankers might cost $100,000 a day. So clearly the owners want to get in and get out of the port as quickly as possible, do what they need to do, whether it's fill up with fuel, take provisions, change crews, pick up supplies, spares, whatever. It all needs to happen quickly. It all needs to be organized. And obviously the port agency is responsible to the port authority and all the local suppliers for all the costs incurred by the ship. So we settle all the bills, and we act as their agents. And we make sure that everything happens efficiently and quickly. Time is money.
And I'm sure that you do.
Yep, time is money, literally. So if you just go back again, yeah. So then you've got Marine Services. Marine Services is based in Gibraltar, and there we with Gibraltar stevedores, we operate barges and harbour craft, delivering lubricants and provisions to ships calling in Gibraltar. You can carry on, Mohammed. Turning the page. So I've spoken about the port agency, and you can turn the page again. Here you've got a list of our port agents. You see there second from the right on the first row is Chafik Abarudi, who's our manager in Tangier. And you've got the rogues gallery of all our managers and so on throughout the port agency. If you carry on and carry on again, there are just more and more people throughout the port agency, and showing where we are in the Straits of Gibraltar. We're in Algeciras, Gibraltar, and Ceuta, and Tangier. So we've got the Straits very well covered, obviously, and then down in Malta, and then throughout Spain as well.
John, how many people does your company actually employ altogether?
Well, it varies seasonally, but about 200 on a regular basis, and then that can go up to 350 during the summer season.
Wow.
So that is a map of all our offices where we have actual offices or represented. The small circles are where we're represented, but the big circles are where we have an office, and the white circles are where we have a head office, shall we say. So if you'd like to carry on. We also do super yachts, and carry on again for a few pages until you get to Marine Services. Marine Services, as I say, are stevedores in the port of Gibraltar. So, we've got cranes and forklifts, and we do all the containers. Gibraltar's not a big container port, but it's important, and we do that. We also deliver lubricants for all the main principals: Shell, Texaco, BP, Repsol, Cepsa, various others. And we have, if you carry on, Mohammed, we have a couple of barges in Gibraltar which deliver lubricant oils to ships calling in the bay. I'd like to carry on again. And we also have a series of vessels. That's one of them. That's the Lionfish, which deliver provisions in the Bay of Gibraltar. And then we go on to the tourism side of the business, which again is split into various parts. Calypso Tours operates buses. It operates 35 buses, I think, in Gibraltar. So we do tours for tourists, for cruise lines, and we also do tours for visitors coming to Gibraltar from the Costa del Sol. And if you'd like to carry on, we also do shore excursions for cruise lines throughout Spain. So we're in Cartagena, we're in Valencia, we're in the Canary Islands, Barcelona. So we're doing, we're very busy now in Spain itself, and I'm doing many more cruise lines in Spain than we are in Gibraltar, actually. And then if you carry on until you get to the cable car, the company owns and operates the cable car, which was constructed in 1966 to the top of the rock of Gibraltar. It was refurbished extensively in 1986 after the frontier reopened. And we now have a major project to demolish all the buildings, bottom and top station, and change the cable car cabins from the current 30 passenger cabins to 80 passenger cabins.
Wow.
And which would increase the capacity from 260 passengers per hour to 1,150 passengers per hour. We've already got planning permission for this project. We're waiting for the treaty between Gibraltar, Europe, the UK, Spain to be agreed. Because last time we built the cable car in 1966, they closed the cable car, they closed the frontier on us
Yes.
the frontier in 1969. So we clearly don't want that to happen again.
Of course not.
We want a fluid frontier. We want excellent relations with our neighbors in Spain, and we want to be able to improve Gibraltar's tourist product with this fantastic new cable car that we would like to build. We have the plans already. So, yes.
I actually remember when the cable car was being built. I was 6 years old, and I remember, seeing it grow, the towers, and I was fascinated with it all.
Yeah, well, it's a tremendous product which my father constructed in 1966, and remember in those days when it was first built, no one was allowed to the top of the rock.
That's right. It was all MOD property.
It was all military, only military, and it was, you could only get to the top via cable car.
Yes.
And there was this unclimbable fence beyond which only military personnel were allowed. So it took quite some negotiating to allow for the cable car to be constructed. And anyway, the rest is history.
History, yes.
Yeah. So we've got some exciting projects in the pipeline. COVID.
Can you share any of those with us, John?
Not really.
Okay.
We have ambitions. Reestablishing links with Morocco. It's in our DNA, shall we say? But there are difficulties to overcome. We've been through the pandemic, which has posed its own challenges.
Yes.
We clearly have this big project of the cable car, and there are one or two other projects which we're working on as well. So we've got things in the pipeline, but certainly, it's a shame. It's a shame that Moroccans working in Gibraltar have such difficulties getting back to Tangier, back to Morocco, and we would love to be able to facilitate the improvement of those services in some way, somehow.
I mean, a direct airline would be ideal, you know, because we used to have that pre-COVID, and then it hasn't been reestablished, and it really is, you
But
know,
I understand
difficult.
it wasn't a commercial success, you know, that operation. So it's not as easy as just
Oh, I understand. I
Yogi
understand.
Bear.
But I also have to say that it was never advertised. And, you
Yeah.
know, forever, Priscilla and I were taking selfies in front of the plane and advertising it on our Facebook. And, you know, a lot of people didn't even know that the flight existed.
Wouldn't it be nice if there was an old DC, you know, Dakota that
Yes,
we could pick out and bring Yogi
absolutely,
Bear on the
absolutely,
side of it?
absolutely.
The
John,
world moved on.
we have another video that we'd like to play for you.
Yeah.
One of your employees from Morocco was kind enough to record this message, which we'd like to play now, Mohammed, please.
All right.
Um, your man Shafiq in Morocco, which
Yeah.
I met briefly, he actually recorded the following message for you.
I mentioned Shafiq a few minutes ago.
Yes, yes. So I thought it was very fitting to play
I'm
this for you
sitting
now.
down in MH office here and hope that this message finds you well and sound. Hope the family is doing well. I'm very happy that you've been chosen for this interview. Well, I didn't come to a surprise for me. You know, that's the Gibraltar Straits of Gibraltar Association choose you to conduct this interview. But basically, you are the right obvious pick for this one. Who would be better placed to talk about Tangier that you carry in your heart, with many fond and nostalgical souvenirs when you were traveling with your father, or your late father, sorry. And I'm pretty sure that you will have so many nice stories and anecdotes to reveal, given the long established history of MH Blend and the Gaggero family special ties with Tangier. Well, now it's gone all over 100 years presence here in Tangier, so everyone knows about Gaggero's family and MH Blend with the Mont Scalp. So it's like a very known brand, I would say. Apart from proven strong relation link between Tangier and Gibraltar, the company and your family have also been assisting and promoting cultural bridge between the two sides, you know, via the Mont Scalp and your personal and private visit, you know, on a yearly basis, and doing some extraordinary charitable work. I'm very, very proud to have worked with this company and have known you, and well, as every employees and staff of MH Blend, we feel as being embraced as a family. Well, as I mentioned, you are in the better position to say the history of MH Blend Tangier, since I only joined the company in 2012. Well, it's now already 10 years. However, my ties with the company go beyond that date. You know, since my late grandfather, first mayor of Tangier, was the closest friend of the general manager of MH Blend at that time, Mr. Abe Cassis. And they also were given the opportunity to my father, my late father, to work on a summer job on board Mont Scalpe, you know, as a steward. And he was telling me so many nice and exciting stories about how he was enjoying, you know, doing the crossing between Gibraltar and Tangier and looking at all those travels. So, yeah, it was like making basically Europe closer to Morocco, to Africa. Above all, there is no one in Tangier that never heard about MH Blend, which brought closer the British culture at its best with a touch of sunlight. Well, we talked about the past of the company past and the way it's going forward with our development, going further south, opening offices in Mohammedia, Casablanca, Joflassoir. I'm sure that everyone will know MH Blend throughout Morocco. Well, I wish you a very pleasant and wonderful evening, and looking forward to see you very soon. All my best wishes, bonne continuation, and ma salama.
Shukran, Shafiq. Thank you very much for that video.
Shukran indeed. Very kind.
It's fantastic when you can get your employees to feel like that. So you're obviously doing an amazing job, John. We're now going to open up questions. I'm sure we've probably have questions waiting to come on the screen. There we have Brahim Krikas that says, on behalf of the Straits Gibraltar Association, Gibraltar Morocco Business Association, it is my pleasure to extend a cheerful welcome to Mr. John. Your presence and experience is very important for us to learn from, especially when it's come to build a bridges of links between the Kingdom of Morocco and Gibraltar. Thank you very much, Brahim Krikas. And Brahim also say, in our days, Mr. John, and based on your experience, how important is linking Gibraltar with Morocco by sea and air for both goods and passengers?
I think it is very important, and it's something we've got to work on. It's not easy. It's not as simple as the old days, but it is something that we have, as I say, in our DNA, and we have it on the agenda. We've had so much on in the last few years with the pandemic, with the cable car, with various other things that we're working on, but we'll get to it.
Inshallah.
Inshallah.
Priscilla and I will probably be your best customers.
I hope so. I love going to Morocco. It's my time in Fez and Marrakesh and Tangier. Love it.
We have a gentleman by the name of Nicholas Karnani saying, such great memories of this beautiful ferry at the time, crossed the straits so many times on it, takes me back to my wonderful childhood. Thank you very much, Nicholas, for sharing that with us. Oh, and we have Kevin Salsa that says, thanks, John. It's so interesting, all the history that your family has worked on for so long back in time. Really appreciate it. I only had in mind MH plans by sea and the famous Mont Scalpe. Really shocked with so much history. A big thanks. Really appreciate. Shokran Bazar. Thank you very much, Kevin. Yes, I'm sure that today John has been an eye-opener to a lot of Gibraltarians who thought that MH Plans was just an office in Cloister Building selling tours and cruises.
I'd extend an invitation to any one of your viewers to come round to our offices, because our offices are really a living museum. Outside my door of this office where I'm sitting now, there's a big picture of the Mont Scalpe looking back at Gibraltar from the bridge with the funnel there in the picture. You can't see the whole ship, but you're looking from the bridge to the funnel, looking back at Gibraltar. And I always say you can almost hear the engines throbbing. And it's a lovely painting, painted actually by a cousin of mine. There's so much more to talk about and to see if you come to the offices, and I'm happy to spend a few moments showing people what some of the things we have.
Thank you, John, for extending that invitation. We have Nancy from Gibraltar that says, the Gaggero family operated the ship, the Mont Scalpe, which for 33 years was the lifeline between Gibraltar and Morocco, especially during the years of close frontier. Is the ship still in life, Mr. John? Any information? Where is it now? I'm asking this for my future photography project. Well, I think you've answered that question already, but it may be if you'd like to repeat, just in case she wasn't tuned in when you actually mentioned.
Yes, the Mont Scalpe, as we mentioned, was sold to Greek ship owners, and they sold it on to the government of Mozambique. And according to the World Ship Society, the ship sank in the entrance of the port of Maputo in a storm. And if you look on Google Earth and you look very carefully and search, it took me a while to find it, you can see the skeleton of a ship, which is about the right size and shape of the Monscalpe. And I think that that's where she lies.
There you have it. I hope that answers Nancy's question. There we have another. Nora from Fez, Morocco, says, it seems that linking Gibraltar with Morocco is a difficult issue at the present time due to the presence of political, economic, and many other obstacles. Tell us about the difficulties and obstacles that you faced at the time back in 1969. Do you think, Mr. John, that the Monscalpe experience can be revived, or is it difficult in our present time?
Well, in 1969, I think it was relatively easy because Algeciras as a port was not developed. There were no other shipping lines operating to Morocco. So both Morocco and Gibraltar were opened their arms to the land service. Remember that we had been linking Gibraltar and Morocco since, what was the date, 1860 something, way back when the Arab and the Adelia used to do it then. So we had a long history, a long connection. Today, there are questions of licenses. There's the competition from a very well-established industry in Algeciras operating, and of course Ceuta operating a very regular and thorough service. So connecting Gibraltar to Tangier for simply passengers or car ferries would be more complicated. The thing has to be thought through a little bit more. I'm not saying it's impossible, but it needs a little bit of work. Let's just leave it at that.
Yes. And we have, Alicia and Wayne Sr. would love to see again more flights and ships to Tangiers. Yes, thank you very much. We all would.
Yes.
So let's keep our fingers crossed that it will be a future project of your company, John. We have Laishi El Habushi from Tangier saying, I would be so grateful if Mr. John could share with me his visual archives and documents. I am interested in writing academic articles about them. Thank you very much. Mr. Laishi is a former guest of ours. He's a teacher in Tetuan, and he's asking if he can have access to your footage.
We have everything that I've shown you today. We have digitized. We have a digital archive of this. And we also have a lot of stuff which can't be digitized because it's physical books and models and articles and so on, which is lying around the office. And we've got books and books of photographs. All the photographs, as I say, have been digitized. I'm happy to make available much of what we have, but there's so much that I need a bit of a pointer as to. It would be great if you'd come to the office and see what there is, and then we could arrange.
He actually lives in Morocco and he teaches in Tetuan.
Right.
So physically coming to the office might be not so easy. But if you don't mind me sharing what you've sent us, I'm quite happy to send to him if that's okay with you.
That's fine with me. And if you want more information on particular subjects, I can look through our archives and send you, make available what we've got.
Excellent. See if we have any more questions lined up. Maybe not. I have one more thing for you, John. And Mohammed, if you can play our next recording, please.
My name is Abdussalam Al-Futuh Slasi. I'm starting with Image Plant in Gibraltar since 1984, 38 years ago. When I'm starting to the company, I remember Johnny and George, they're still going to the school. Wow. And now it's 38 years. I'm the caretaker and head office, and also we look after the office down to the port, and also we used to do the cable car bottom station. If I wasn't happy, I wouldn't stay with the company. I've been seeing a lot of people comes in and out, hundreds of the people comes and goes. I'm still here. In Gibraltar, I didn't have any family, but I have Gaggero's family and Image Blunt family. Thanks to God.
Well, John, beautiful words spoken straight from the heart. What a blessing to have someone like that working for you for so many years and to be able to express those beautiful words that he's spoken.
I just spoke to Absalam before I shut the door and came into my office. I said what I was doing. He gave me no indication that he was going to say that.
Well,
So,
it was meant as a surprise. I hope it has been a surprise.
very pleasant.
We like to do these things on our programs,
Very
on our
good.
cultural exchanges. John, it really has been an absolute pleasure to have you as our guest. In fact, we've been now on for an hour and 20 minutes. You are the guest which has the longest that we ever had. It is so interesting. I am sure that we could talk easily for another hour, but I don't want to keep you. If there's anything else you'd like to add before we bring this exchange to a close.
Just greetings to all my Moroccan friends. Thank you, Chafiq. Thank you, Absalam. Thank you, Henry and Mohammed. Um, may the links and ties that bind Gibraltar and Morocco and Tangier especially grow and strengthen. And Bismillah.
Thank you. And we have a final quote from Straight to Gibraltar saying, "Thank you very much, Mr. John, for your illuminating and insightful talk." And, thank you, John, once again. And thank you all that have joined us in our cultural exchange. It has been a pleasure to host you tonight, live from the Rock of Gibraltar, bringing our cultures closer. Good night and stay safe.
Thank you, Henry. Thank you, Mohammed.
Thank you, John.